What is good, hunters? Welcome back to another video. In this video I want to talk about hunting pressure, and most importantly, what does that look like? Because I believe a lot of new players and existing players, I don't think they're really aware that this is even in the game. And even if they do, I don't think they hunt consciously with hunting pressure in consideration. And I feel this is causing a lot of players not to be able to find animals, because when they do herd management or simply just shoot animals from a herd, I'm not sure that they're thinking, well, I'm causing pressure, so I need to adjust how I hunt. And I think that's leading to players not being able to find animals, because I believe they're not really exhausting all the zones that are within the vicinity. They keep changing time and they keep going back to the same zones, and they're thinking, well, I can't find animals. And I think that's what's happening for the most part. So I've been doing some studying on this for a few months now, and while I don't have a full conclusion as to what's happening, I think I'm at a place where I can kind of give some kind of insight as to what I think, or theory as to what's going on, or what hunting pressure looks like. First of all, we need to understand what hunting pressure is. And that's simply when you shoot an animal close to a zone, a feeding zone, sleeping zone, whatever it might be. If you shoot an animal within the range of the zone, whether it's twice, whether it's once, what you're doing here is that you're building hunting pressure. And what happens is the animals don't return to that zone for a couple days. Sometimes it can take a week. I've had animals take a week and a half, from my observation. So depending how much pressure you're applying, you have to remember or keep this in mind that there's a chance that you won't see these animals back at that zone for a very long time. Now, to start my study, what I had to really try to understand is that how many herds occupy a zone. I think I've asked this in the Discord or a few months ago, and I don't think I really got an answer for it. Now, based on what I've been testing, what I've observed, it seems as if one herd occupies a zone. Now, I know that these zone ranges are huge. In one vicinity, you can have 3-4 zones, and they're massive. They cover a huge, massive land, right? Or area. So, from what I'm seeing, if you were to change time and come back to a zone, 9 times out of 10, you would see the same animals at that zone. And I'm talking about where you're not causing any kind of hunting pressure. You're not trying to shoot at them, you're just observing them. Change the time, come back to that zone, and I guarantee you're going to see the same animals that you had there before. And if you change the time a few times without even messing with them, eventually they will switch naturally to another zone. And I believe that is their cycle. So again, that itself adds another layer as to sometimes we can't find animals, because if we're tracking a certain herd and you're sleeping and you're trying to, change the time and you want to go back and check on that herd and you don't see them, there's a high chance that they've moved to another zone. And I don't believe they need hunting pressure to move to another zone. But when you add hunting pressure, it changes that loop. It changes the way they operate faster. You basically are causing a change, which will happen naturally. You're actually pressuring these animals, causing them to get off their route, get off their hunting routine, if you want to say so, and move that to another zone. So the other thing I had to look at while I'm trying to study this is that, do zones overlap? And what I mean by that is, if an animal is feeding within a range of 3 zones, would it overlap? Would they move into another zone and feed from another herd's need zone? I believe I've asked about this, and the answer I got is that there is no overlap. Now, from my experience, I believe there is. There isn't many, but I believe on some level, depending on the hunting pressure, there is some overlap. Now, I cannot be 100% sure because it's really, really hard to capture this. It took me months, but I believe I've kind of caught on to something here. We all know that high fitness animals have a certain contained area of the map that they feed and they move around or they operate in. Very rare you will, or if any at all, you'll find a high fitness animal in a low fitness zone. It just doesn't happen. And you have about 3 or 4 per map, if I remember correctly, of these high fitness zones that are pretty much guaranteed to give you good genetics. There are other zones we will never see anything beyond a 2-star or a 1-star. It's going to always be low genetics. So based on that testing and that observation, there's reasons to believe that there won't be an overlap, that high fitness animals will never go to a low fitness area. But is that really the case? Because what I'm trying to get to here is that if there is no overlap, then which means when you pressure these animals, they run within a certain zone that they're sort of programmed to be in. So let's say they hit up 3 zones. When you pressure them at one, they will run off, right? Or when you spook them, they will run off to another zone or another area within that zone. And I believe they kind of bounce around those 3 zones only. Because if we're saying there's no overlap, which means that animal will not leave that area. So if you spook them and then you try to find them again, I believe if you really pay attention to how they move, they are running within a certain range, a certain need zone range, and they don't leave that range. And I believe that is how they are programmed. So what happens when hunting pressure is applied? What does that look like? And part of it is obviously not finding animals at a particular zone, but what really happens? And what I believe happens is when you create hunting pressure and these animals move, some kind of overlap happens. Now check this footage that I have here. These animals basically come down from the left up on the hill here, and they move and make their way down through this area all the way over into the center of this road that we see over here. And that whole process could take 10 to 15 minutes, depending on what they're doing. If they're resting along the way, they're eating along the way, it could take longer. But if you really come here and you observe, these animals will come out here, I would say maybe around 9, and they would walk all the way down and make their way into the center of this road, and they will sit there. And this is the only herd that will do that, right? So clearly we can see there's only one herd occupying this zone, and we can use this 3-star and this 2-star animals as a way to sort of track that. When you sleep and you come back, you would notice that these 2 animals are the same in the herd and they come to the same spot. But what happens if we pressure them? And I did that, and I found them all the way down here at this pond. And if you notice, there's a herd on the hill, and there's one really coming down to the bottom of the hill that I'm calling. And I believe that those animals that are on the hill, which they're out of range, I can't really see what star or whatever they are at without spooking the ones at the bottom here, so I can't really move closer. But I believe those are the herds that I pressured that was way back that was sitting in the center of the road. And I believe that's exactly what happens. So if I was not aware of hunting pressure, I would come back to the middle of the road there to look for these animals and realize, wait, 2 days have gone by, I don't see these animals. Where are they? I can't find them. Not realizing that they're all the way down here at this pond, overlapping almost with another herd. So I believe this is exactly what hunting pressure looks like. while there's no overlap or much of it, these zones do connect. And these animals will come down and they would come to the edge of their zones. And there are many times where you would probably be walking around and you would encounter two herds close together. Either their path is close to each other on their way to their zones, either their feeding zones are close together, or it's because of hunting pressure that you're encountering a lot of herds that are close to each other. And I have not really tested this much on Aurora shores because of the high density. I don't really think that's going to be really how can I put it? A good way of testing on that map. But I feel it's better to test on trans because of how spaced out the animals are. I want to see how far you can push these animals when you apply hunting pressure to them. And I believe this is exactly what happens. There's some overlap and the animals sort of meet at a certain point, where you're seeing here that one is on the hill and one is lower down close to the bottom where the water is. So again, when we hunt, we want to keep these things in mind, that we're causing change, we're causing hunting pressure, and you need to move around and adjust as you hunt. It's not just about hitting up that same zone every time, because at some point they won't show up there. So let me know what you guys think about hunting pressure. What's your experience with it? What you think of this theory? Because I think we're on to something here. Because we always talk about hunting pressure, but we never really understand how it works 100%. I still don't. I'm still doing some testing on it, but I think we're on to something here. I believe that these animals move from zone to zone, and it's up to you to track how these animals move around. As long as you get the hang of that, it becomes a little easier to find these animals. Because as we hunt, we need to understand that we cannot cause a lot of hunting pressure. If you have to, go ahead, but you're going to be dealing with a lot of drought, a lot of not being able to find these animals, because from what I heard from the Discord, from the devs, from players, it's that when you pressure these animals too much, they despawn. So whether that is true or not, that's what I'm hearing. So if these animals despawn, you won't find them. It becomes empty. So you want to avoid that. From my experience, I don't believe that they despawn. Maybe they do. But from what I'm seeing here that I found, they overlap. There has to be some kind of overlap happening here. That's my feeling. So let me know what you guys think again in the comments. What's your experience with this? Your encounter with this? And thank you for watching, and thank you for listening.